The SS454 with the LS6 engine versus the 446 pack, two of the most brutal street machines ever unleashed on American asphalt. You've heard the bench racing arguments for decades, but the actual quarter-mile data tells a story that'll make your jaw drop. In 1970, General Motors and Chrysler went to war. Not in boardrooms or dealerships, but on drag strips across America, where horsepower was the only currency that mattered. Chevrolet rolled out their ultimate weapon, the Chevelle SS454 with the legendary LS6 engine. Meanwhile, Chrysler unleashed their triple carburetor 446 pack in everything from Roadrunners to Cudas. These weren't just muscle cars, these were barely legal street missiles that rewrote the rules of factory performance. The LS6 454 was rated at 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers alone made grown men weak in the knees. But here's what Chevrolet didn't advertise. Their rating system was conservative as hell. Dyno tests from Hot Rod magazine showed the LS6 was actually pushing closer to 500 horses at the crank. This wasn't just an engine. It was 454 cubic inches of pure violence wrapped in cast iron. The 446 pack, Chrysler claimed 390 horsepower and 490 pound-feet. Three Holley two-barrel carburetors sat on top like a mechanical crown, feeding this beast through a progressive linkage that could go from grocery getter to strip killer in a heartbeat. But just like GM, Chrysler was playing games with their numbers. Independent testing showed the 446 pack was easily making 425 to 450 horses when properly tuned. Let's talk about what made these engines special beyond just displacement. The LS6 featured solid lifters, forged aluminum pistons, 4-bolt mains, and rectangular port heads that could flow air like a hurricane. The compression ratio sat at 11.25 to 1, so high that you needed premium fuel just to keep it from detonating itself to death. The cam profile was so aggressive that it loped at idle like a top-fuel dragster warming up. This engine wasn't built for comfort, it was built to dominate. The 446 pack took a different approach. While the LS6 was all about exotic internals and race-bred components, the 440 focused on brute force simplicity, cast pistons, hydraulic cam, and a more streetable 10.5 to 1 compression ratio meant you could actually drive this thing to work without fouling plugs every morning. But when those three carburetors opened up, first the center two-barrel for cruising, then the outboard carbs for war, you had 1,350 cubic feet per minute of fuel and air, turning your rear tires into smoke machines. The first documented quarter-mile showdown between these titans happened at Detroit Dragway in July 1970. A bone-stock Chevelle SS454 LS6 lined up against a Plymouth Roadrunner with the 446 pack. Both cars had factory tires, factory exhausts, and factory tune. The temperature was 78 degrees with low humidity, perfect conditions for maximum power. When the tree dropped, the Chevelle hooked hard. Those 450 horses launched 3,773 pounds of steel like a rocket sled. First gear disappeared in 1.8 seconds. Second gear was gone before you could blink. The speedometer needle swept past 60 miles per hour in just 5.9 seconds. Meanwhile, the Roadrunner was struggling for traction. The 440's massive torque was overwhelming the F7014 polyglass tires, creating a smoke show that looked spectacular but cost precious tenths. By the 8th mile mark, the Chevelle had pulled 2 car lengths. The LS6 was screaming at 6,500 RPM, well into its power band. The 440 was catching up, those 3 carburetors dumping fuel like a fire hose. But it wasn't enough. The Chevelle crossed the quarter mile in 13.42 seconds at 108 miles per hour. The Roadrunner followed at 13.89 seconds at 104 miles per hour. But wait, that's not the whole story. See, weight makes a massive difference in drag racing, and not all 446 pack cars were created equal. A month later at National Trail Raceway, a different matchup changed everything. This time, a 446-pack Dodge Challenger RT faced off against another SS454 LS6. The Challenger was lighter than the Roadrunner by almost 200 pounds, and the driver knew exactly how to launch that 440 without going up in tire smoke. The result shocked everyone watching. The Challenger ripped off a 13.58 at 106 miles per hour, while the Chevelle could only manage 13.71 at 107 miles per hour. Same engines, different outcome. The Mopar crowd went wild. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't so clear-cut. Car and driver got their hands on both cars for their famous Street Sweepers comparison in September 1970. Their test, Chevelle SS454 LS6, was a 4-speed car with 3.31 rear gears. The 446-pack test car was a Plymouth Cuda, also with a 4-speed but running 3.54 gears. Professional drivers, prepped track, identical weather conditions. This was as scientific as street car testing got in 1970. Their results? The Chevelle ran 13.81 at 103.8 miles per hour. The Cuda, 13.95 at 102.4 miles per hour. But here's where it gets interesting. The Chevelle was faster through the quarter, but the Cuda was quicker to 60 miles per hour by a tenth of a second. The 440's instant torque gave it the jump, but the LS6's higher rev ceiling and superior breathing let it run down the Mopar in the back half of the track. Motor Trend took a different approach. They grabbed 3 LS6 Chevelles and 3 446-pack cars, a mix of Dodges and Plymouths, and ran them all day long at Orange County International Raceway. After 50 runs between all 6 cars, they averaged the times. The LS6 cars averaged 13.68 seconds at 106.2 miles per hour. The 446-pack cars averaged 13.91 seconds at 104.7 miles per hour. But the spread was tiny. We're talking about 0.2 of a second and 1.5 miles per hour difference after dozens of runs. What really stood out was consistency. The LS6 times varied by almost half a second between runs, depending on whether that solid lifter cam was happy or not. The 446-pack cars, their time stayed within 0.3 all day long. That hydraulic cam and lower compression made the 440 more predictable, more repeatable. On the street, that meant you could count on the same performance whether it was a cold Monday morning or a hot Saturday night. Let's talk about the guys who actually raced these cars on the street, where magazine numbers didn't mean squat. Tom Hoover, Chrysler's chief engineer for the 446-pack program, admitted years later that they specifically tuned the 440 for real-world street racing. "We knew kids were going to race these cars from stoplight to stoplight," he said. The 440 was set up to hook up and go on regular street tires with pump gas. Meanwhile, Vince Piggins, who headed up Chevrolet's performance program, had a different philosophy with the LS6. "We built a race engine that happened to be street legal," he explained. "If you wanted to go fast, really fast, the LS6 was untouchable, but you had to know how to drive it." The real-world difference came down to this. The LS6 was faster when everything was perfect. Fresh plugs, good gas, warm engine, experienced driver, prepped track. Give it all those conditions and it would destroy almost anything on 4 wheels. But the 446-pack was faster when everything wasn't perfect. Cold morning, the 440 fired right up. Crappy gas? The 440 didn't care. Inexperienced driver? The 440's broader power band was more forgiving. Track records from 1970 and 1971 back this up. At sanctioned NHRA events, LS6 Chevelles dominated the stock classes, taking home more trophies than any other combination. But in street racing arrests reported in Hot Rod Magazine's Arrested Development column, 446-pack cars showed up twice as often as LS6 cars. The Mopars were out there every night, while the Chevelles were more selective about when they came out to play. Here's something most people don't know. Both engines had secret weapons available through their backdoor racing programs. Chevrolet offered the ZL1 aluminum heads and intake through their central office production order system. Bolt those on an LS6 and you drop 75 pounds while adding 30 horsepower. Chrysler had the direct connection program offering the 6-pack to 6-barrel conversion, essentially NASCAR spec carburetors that flowed 1,500 cubic feet per minute total. Both modifications kept the cars technically stock for certain racing classes while adding serious performance. The craziest verified time for a stock LS6 came from Dick Harrell's personal Chevelle. With nothing more than headers, slicks, and those Copo aluminum heads, he ran 12.84 at 112 miles per hour. That's supercar territory even by today's standards. The quickest documented 446-pack was Ronnie Sox's Plymouth Cuda that ran 12.91 at 111 miles per hour with similar modifications. We're talking about two cars separated by 0.07 of a second after a quarter mile of acceleration. That's closer than most NASCAR photo finishes. The insurance companies ended this war before we could really see which engine would evolve into the ultimate winner. By 1972, both the LS6 and the high-performance 446-pack were effectively banned from production. Insurance rates for these cars had become so astronomical that dealers couldn't sell them. A 25-year-old male would pay more for insurance than car payments on an SS454. The party was over, but the legacy lived on in different ways. The LS6 became the holy grail for Chevrolet collectors. Today, a numbers-matching LS6 Chevelle can sell for over $200,000. It's considered the pinnacle of GM muscle car development. The 446-pack became the working man's big block. You could build one from junkyard parts for a fraction of the cost of an LS6, and it would still run 13s all day long. Go to any local drag strip on a Friday night, and you'll see more 440-powered Mopars than any other classic combination. Looking back 50 years later, declaring a definitive winner misses the point. The LS6 was faster on paper and at the track when conditions were perfect. The 446-pack was faster in the real world where conditions were never perfect. The LS6 was an exotic piece of engineering that pushed the boundaries of what a production engine could be. The 446-pack was a sledgehammer that delivered brutal performance with Stone Age reliability. Both engines represented the absolute peak of the original muscle car era. Both could launch you down a quarter mile faster than anything else you could buy from a showroom. Both created legends that still get bench raced at every car show in America. The real winner? Everyone who got to experience these monsters when they ruled the streets. Because after 1971, we'd never see anything quite like them again. The quarter-mile numbers tell one story. The LS6 was generally 0.2 quicker and 2 miles per hour faster in magazine tests, but the street racing records tell another story. The 446-pack won more stoplight drags because it was out there every night while LS6 owners were home changing spark plugs. In the end, both engines earned their place in the Hall of Fame. The LS6 for showing us what was possible, the 446-pack for showing us what was practical, and 50 years later, we're still arguing about which one was really faster. That's the truth about the SS454 LS6 versus the 446-pack. Not the bench racing BS you hear at car shows, but the actual documented facts from when these beasts went head-to-head. Two different philosophies, two different approaches to power, one goal: total domination of the quarter mile. And honestly, they both succeeded.